When did you realize you have a toxic parent? How did that affect your relationship? I was 18. I told my mom that I had a backache from standing at work too long. She gave me some medicine, claiming it would help alleviate the pain. It was a 10 milligrams methadone pill. Oh, it took the pain away alright. I also threw up for 2 days straight. Couldn't function. And itched like I'd slept in an anthill. Years later I became addicted to opiates, and she was my main supply. This went on for 10 years or so, before I finally decided to get sober. I wouldn't say they were inherently toxic, just that their parenting style didn't work for me. I became vaguely aware of this in middle or high school. I only noticed how much it affected me after I moved out at 21. Not living with them and seeing them infrequently dramatically improved my mental well-being. I was a teenager with a girlfriend, and one day, she casually mentioned that she wished she had a TV for her bedroom. Being a teenager and in school, my job was menial, working at a big department store. So for Christmas, I went out and bought her a TV. It was all the money I had. For some reason, my mother was furious that I bought her a TV and didn't get her anything. She was screaming at me. I told her it was all the money I had. She continued to scream at me and then began beating me. I had to push her off of me, shove her out of the room, and slam the door in her face. That was the day, Christmas Day BTW, that I realized my mother was toxic. It was also the day my Christmas spirit totally broke. I wouldn't say my parents are toxic. We just have a hard time connecting on a personal level. We don't share the same interests or ideas. We are very different people, and that makes communicating difficult. When I was 12 years old, my dad challenged me to a fight. In truth, I don't remember why exactly it happened. I probably didn't want to do some huge project he had in mind for me. He was apt to give me some task like weeding a huge field in 100+ degrees by hand, while he sat inside and drank beer and watched football. And I didn't appreciate that. After that, I pretty much decided I wouldn't challenge him on anything ever again. I just kept my head down and did what was asked of me until I could move out. Now he's sobered up and wonders why we don't have the best of relationships. And I'm still keeping my head down and not challenging his view of himself. We get along great, as long as we never talk. I remember when I was 4 or 5, my mother and I were at some sort of outdoor market. Maybe a big yard sale. Anyway, I saw a shiny metal hair clip on the ground. One of those big crocodile clips. I picked it up, walked back to the people running the nearest stand, and said something like, "I think somebody lost this," before returning to my mom's side. I remember her hissing, "Why did you do that? That could have been silver." As a kid, I didn't know why that moment stuck with me, but now I know that it was my first realization that something wasn't right about her. That's not the worst example, just the first, and one that stuck with me for a long time. It got worse over the years. In both parents. Haven't talked to my mom in about 8 years now because of how toxic she was. I really realized at the time I didn't show up when she expected me to. I think I got home at 6 when I should have been home at 4 p.m. Not am, and she raised her hand to hit me. It wasn't anything new, but for some reason that time my brain finally clicked, and I was like, this is not an appropriate response and I don't have to take being hit anymore. So I told her not to, and she kicked me out. We didn't speak for almost 10 years after that. We've managed to reconnect since. It's still kind of weird and awkward, but we are both genuinely trying. My stepmom is one evil bitch. She would make up shit about me, and my dad just did what she said. I ended up getting arrested because my stepmom told the cops that I threatened to kill her. After I told them, "You should just kill yourselves." My dad was mentally and physically abusive too. Now that I'm an adult, I keep asking myself, how could you do that to a kid? Went to youth jail or whatever. After a couple days, I guess they were ready to release me. I told them I didn't want to go back to my dad's. I ended up staying in like foster care status housing. The kids there were way fucked, by the way, for like 2 weeks, while my real mom was trying to afford a plane ticket to move back with her. I had lived with her most of my life and wanted to have a relationship with my dad. Also, when my dad paid for my stepsister's college, vehicles, housing, etc. while I was in the army, he actually still tries to hang out. I just honestly don't see the point. Couple years ago my dad just started being very aggressive. I felt like I couldn't make my own choices and he was trying to control everything I did. He would make me feel guilty for accepting things he got me, yet I never asked for. This is at 15, and he would break me down mentally. It was hard because he was a great dad for my whole life. It got to the point where he was saying I could just go live with my mom. He doesn't care anymore. So that's exactly what I did. Never have spoke to him again. I knew when I was a teenager that my mom wasn't a good person. It wasn't until my dad died that I realized I didn't have to put up with her. Haven't spoken to her since last Christmas. Even then was very limited. When I was 11 and my mom told me to pick which parent I loved more and wanted to live with, I was in shock for a moment, but told her I wanted to live with my dad, and she said I was not able to make a decision for myself. So she uprooted me and my sisters and moved us out. We are okay now. She's still an unstable alcoholic, but I love her. When I was a depressed teen and was crying about how I had recently lost my very last friend due to various reasons, she became annoyed at my crying and said, "Why don't you kill yourself and get tea over with?" He couldn't believe she said that, and to this day, 12 years later, I'm still bitter and traumatized by what she said. If I wasn't so much of a coward, I would have done it that very day. When I confront her about it, she doesn't admit fault and comes up with excuses. I love my mother, and I don't think she's toxic on purpose. Just never knows how to handle her children's emotions and feelings. She has a toxic mother herself and had an awful childhood, and at that time she was sickly, so I try not to hold it against her, but it still hurts, and that memory will forever be burned into my mind. I love her, and she tries her best, but she can be nasty at times. Took me 28 years to realize it. They no longer exist to me.